Jasmin's an artist, obviously, and her multimedia practice often focuses on themes of visual perception and memory. She's a graduate of the Visual Arts program at SF State, and she also attended and was a participant in the Experimental Independent School of Art here in San Francisco. Laura Albert is the author of the novel Sarah, the short story collection The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things, and the novella Herald's End, all of which were published under the pen name or pseudonym J.T. LeRoy.
Well, I've known Laura for a long time now, so I would read all this stuff in the media, and then things that she wrote, and just a lot of material. And when I had the opportunity to do the window, I just decided that I wanted to, do something about JT and Laura in it. But basically, I was sort of combing through all of the things that I had read in the past, and new things that I had never read, and it started to get really overwhelming because everything was blurring in with each other and moving back and forth in time, stuff from the 80s that Laura wrote, stuff that, negative, maybe really slanted things in the media, just a whole range of materials. And I guess it sort of felt like I wanted to show a sample of the things that were out there, and it's such a small, really, really, it's such a tiny amount of things that are actually out there that it doesn't really show the diversity of what's out there. But I thought that if I could try to compile a bunch of things and put them all in one space, that maybe it can become less fragmented, and maybe some kind of new message or new variables could emerge while they're in the same space. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So what was the experience of finding out, okay, here's this writer, J.T. LeRoy, I'm going to read this book, and then you said within 2 weeks' time you were reading the interview with Laura in the Paris Review, so you sort of found out about everything within the span of a couple of weeks.
What was that like?
Yeah, what was it like? I mean, was it, or did you know, going into reading Sarah?
I didn't know, except, pseudonym, or I didn't know anything, really. But it was intense because everything, in the Paris Review made a lot of sense, and then the book itself was so interesting. And I think at the time I, for some reason, wasn't able to read, I don't know why, I just couldn't read fiction. And so when I read Sarah, I was all of a sudden immersed in this world that seemed so real,
It's, you work in the dream state. You so much work in the dream state, and so much of your work is that articulation. And so to see it there, it's so very moving to me, and it's so very, and then it's over here. I went to New College, the school that got closed down, and I got my degree from there. And it was funny, I did business math, I just added up, I put out, I had a band, and we did, I just added all the expenses, and they gave me the math grant. But, we taught together at A26 Valencia over here. Dave Eggers had invited me to do that, and that was really moving. I used to live on 22nd and Cap. So it's very much the area, but it's definitely, I see it and I understand it's the language of dreams. And we communicate in that. And I think that's the realm of artists, the communication of dreams. And it's very open to interpretation. And to see that there, it is just such a privilege. And you're such a very precious person. So I don't think I have words for what it means, but it's phenomenally moving.
Jasmin, you were also in some ways kind of a participant in the sort of fallout or things that happened when it was revealed that Laura was the writer of the J.T. LeRoy books and that sort of thing, and that you sort of jumped in the fray a little bit and started emailing with people and responding and defending Laura.
Oh yeah, well.
So in some ways it's kind of an autobiography for you as well.
Yeah, I guess
piece,
so.
Right?
Yeah, I definitely was sort of a witness, because whenever something would come, be in the news or something, then I would witness it, and then kind of process with Laura. But yeah, as far as the blogs, a lot of people have written posts about Laura in blogs, and a lot of times they're really oversimplified, moralizing, and just two-dimensional. And so I would write a comment, and then we would go back and forth sometimes, and normally it would go like I would say, well, why did you say this lie? And they would say like, oh, I just heard from somebody. They would never be able to substantiate like why they believed what they believed. And then eventually, this was the typical pattern, or the general pattern, was that eventually like they would just be like, it's just what I think. Like, and to me that's like, nothing's just what you think, you know? So, and then it'd be like, end of conversation, no more. Like they wouldn't engage with me anymore.
Okay, so graduating from New College, why not go to a grad school with a good writing program, play by the rules, find a mentor, write books, do those sorts of things?
No one ever put it that way to me. If I thought of it, I would have done it that way. You know, it's like if you have land that's always moving and it's built on quicksand, your whole existence is kind of an adjustment. Everything's provisional. Or it might actually be very anchored. You might actually be pretty anchored, but it feels very provisional. I was in New York City, and I had been institutionalized as a kid a number of times, and finally I was removed, and I became a ward of New York City, and was in a group home. And at the time, I never saw represented in the after-school specials when they were just starting to talk about abuse and things that can go wrong in families. They were just starting to talk about that, and what I saw represented were always blonde-haired, blue-eyed little boys when they started to talk about it at all. And I got that in a group home. The building people tried to kick us out. They came out with a petition. And I just was so struck, you know, to kick us out. This was our only home, our only place to be. And I just was, how do you invite compassion in people? How do you make people care? I mean, I had, you know, one thing that was so painful after the reveal was that people saying, well, thank God it isn't true. Thank God those stories aren't true. And I published my work as fiction, but my God, was it true. It was phenomenally true. There was so much more that was not in there. And I just, I won a scholarship to go to, while I was in the group home, to New School for Social Research. And there was a girl ahead of me who I had been institutionalized with once before. We both shared, we bonded because we had been in the same institution before. And she went ahead of me. I followed in her footsteps. I went to the institution she went to, then she won a scholarship, and because she had done so well, I was another group home girl, so they let me in, and she was taking writing classes. And so there was this class, Voice and Silence by Jane Lazar. And at first I was writing about the girls from the group home because I couldn't write about myself, but I always had stories, and they were always male. I mean, I always had that split, and that was how I needed to distance. And the teacher would not allow, girls had to write as girls and boys as boys, because she didn't trust that we had that authenticity of the other. And I said, no, you don't understand. I can't do that. And she insisted. So I would go for as long as I could and have a breakdown and go to a hospital, because I would get too close to the bone. Eventually, I dropped out. I couldn't go, and I left the group home. I was working in a health food store. I was calling hotlines. I would call hotlines always as a boy seeking help, and I would do this even when I was in the group home. I was in a psychiatric day program from 9 to 1. I had group therapy. I had the social worker. I mean, the whole thing is about therapy. And when you enter into a group home, something's wrong with you. I mean, you're disabled, you're fucked up. And so everything is geared towards trying to make you be less fucked up, but also very invested in holding you as this fucked up being. All I know is I really don't know what I talked about because no one got close to what my issues were. The only way I could feel anything was if I moved the whole venue and I would call hotlines, and then I could cry and talk about things and take all the stories of everything going on, because it was constant, like trauma. I mean, like some girl would come and stabbed or something. You just can't imagine, like, this stuff. And then phenomenal beauty and phenomenal connections and girls coming together to heal. I mean, it just was pretty, there are no words. I don't think I've even gotten to understand it all yet. And I think us going back and talking to them, it was part of that reaching out in spirit to kind of understand and honor that. For me, coming out here was a chance to try to start new. And going back to school was an act of faith. I mean, I moved out here, went to a hospital, because that was always my grounding. And then I just threw myself into 12-step programs. And then I went from that, which gave me some sanity of working a rigorous 12-step program, I went back to school. And I tried out being functional. And I also was doing music, and I'd be successful for a little while and then have a breakdown. And I started writing. I mean, a lot of JT's biography was true. I mean, I started writing. You know, you can't make this shit up, really. You know, I mean, the story of how it all happened.
Can you tell me about the picture on the cover of the Parents Review?
Oh, my mother put me in that shirt. I was 8. And it's a shirt that says, I want to be me. And I remember thinking, no, I fucking don't.
Even at 8?
Oh, especially at 8, yeah. No, I remember very clearly, and it was embarrassing to me, but my mom just thought it was like so cool.